If you've ever felt like you just don't fit into your work, that you're meant for a more creative path, and worry that you've started too late or whether your ideas matter or not at all, Hideo Kojima's life is the antidote. Hideo Kojima is a modern auteur, one of the few who can actually get away with such an unconventional title. He created one of the largest video game franchises of all time, Metal Gear Solid, and permanently reshaped his field by bringing a new level of depth to it. The worlds he created, people still obsess over decades later after their creation, and the games he made, critics don't even know how to classify, and yet they're all bestsellers. He broke the rules at every turn and got rewarded for it. But that's not what fascinates me the most about Hideo. What fascinates me is how he became himself, because nothing about his early life suggested that he would become the Hideo Kojima that we know today. Hideo studied economics. He worked a corporate job that he hated, and he was fired. He had no technical skills, and he lied to his family about working in video games because he was too embarrassed about it. He was ridiculed inside the company that would eventually depend on him, and yet he changed an entire industry. Today, I want to share 4 lessons from Hideo Kojima's creative life that can change how you see your own. Whether you're building a business, writing a book, making art, or simply trying to find your path, these 4 principles can become anchors. The first one is the most important. Lesson number 1, know who you are. Hideo Kojima did not start in video games. He started at a normal corporate job in Japan like many Japanese salarymen. His duties were whatever grunt work they needed done, as they often are, and this job was not for him. He knew that, but he shouldered the burden anyway until one day he was let go, unexpectedly, surprisingly. They could have fired him with an email or in silence or laid the blame on him, but instead he was actually met with kindness by the HR woman working at the same company as him. In his offboarding meeting with her, the HR woman acknowledged the elephant in the room. She said, "Hideo, you're a creative person. You should be doing creative work." Obviously, Hideo knew that he was creative, but no one had ever told that to him. No one else had said that to him outside of his own thoughts. Sometimes all it takes is someone naming what you already know, but were too scared to admit to finally accept it. That validation was all that he needed to take a chance on himself. So he looked up what video game companies were publicly listed on the Japanese stock exchange because he assumed that they'd be more stable, and he found only one, Konami. That's how he picked the company that would define his career. It wasn't strategy or a genius choice, there was only one option. So he applied, and luckily he got a job, but he knew his friends and family wouldn't understand. He had gone to school to study economics, so he told them that he worked at a financial firm. He lied. He had a lot of shame around it at first, and even when they began to find out the truth, he was still mocked for it. During a friend's wedding reception, the other guests laughed at him when the groom introduced him by saying, "Kojima is a very talented and otherwise likable person, but I'm sorry to say that for some unknown reason, he's decided to join a video game company." And everybody laughed. But of course, Kojima knew that unknown reason. It was who he was, not a choice like everyone else interpreted it to be. But luckily for him, that's the first recipe for success, knowing who you are. And here's the thing, you can't expect others to understand the part of you that you're still becoming. Kojima didn't need approval, he needed alignment. And alignment begins with telling the truth about who you are. And then, once you know who you are, you just have to put yourself into a system that will let you be who you are. Lesson number 2, you are what you create. Kojima wasn't hired as a designer, director, or programmer. He was hired as a planner, the lowest rung on the ladder. But he was happy, at least internally, to have a foot in the door. Besides a step in the right direction, his coworkers weren't so happy. They criticized him for not having any technical skills, in a field where everybody else was a programmer. Instead of coming over to his desk and saying hi or asking him how he was, they mocked him and would tell him often, "At least complete one video game before you die." Imagine hearing that from your colleagues. That's the kind of toxic work environment that would shut most people down or drive them to quit. But Kojima did something different. He took it literally. He bore the shame and sought to add value where he could. He said, "I'm going to create at least one video game before I die." And soon he was given the chance to be the assistant director of a small game called Penguin Adventure. He wasn't the lead. It wasn't glamorous. It was a game about penguins. But he poured himself into it. He added action to a funny little penguin game. He added in-depth RPG elements that had never been seen before, even multiple endings. He pushed against every technical limitation, even being frustrated by how few colors they had to work with back in that day. And the result was a critical success. Even today, the game is remembered for its depth, something that no one expected from a penguin game. That depth was something Konami wanted. And so when a senior associate needed a replacement to take over for a new project, Metal Gear, Kojima was tapped. A small penguin game opened the door to Metal Gear Solid. And Metal Gear opened the door to the next 29 years of Kojima's creative life, a franchise now worth $2.5 billion. The lesson: create the thing in front of you with everything that you have to give, so that what you create speaks for you. In that way, you are what you make, and your next opportunity is embedded in your current project, even if it feels as small and as silly as a penguin game. Now let's explore what makes Kojima's ideas feel so different. Lesson number 3, read books and go to bookstores. I picked up Kojima's autobiographical book, The Creative Gene, hoping to find lessons about adding depth to your work, coming up with ingenious ideas, how to know when to break the rules. But instead, I was surprised to see it is essentially a book that contains 2 primary lessons, and the last 2 lessons of this video. The first lesson was simply to read books, not the advice that anyone really wants to hear, something that we already all basically know. It's kind of like being told to work out and eat better if you want to get fit. We know the basics already. But what was interesting, though, was why books hold so much value to Kojima. You see, Kojima had a lonely childhood. His father died when he was young. He had no real role models, and he had no adults around that he could ask what to do. So he found them in books. And in this book, there are dozens and dozens of books that left an impression on him. And even now, he carries a stack of books with him everywhere he goes, at least 3 whenever he's traveling back and forth to the office, and he feels off balance if he doesn't have a few with him. But the question is why? And his reason is that because stories let you live entire lives without ever leaving your chair. He says stories allow you to experience places you could never go. You can become a different person entirely. Books expanded his identity. They taught him what was possible. They shaped his worlds. They filled the gaps left by his environment. And most importantly, they connected him to others. A weird quirk of Kojima's is that he still goes to the bookstore every single day. Could you imagine that? Even still, going to the bookstore every day of your life. He says that he does this because a bookstore shows you the world unfiltered. That online, everything you see is algorithmically tailored to you, but in a bookstore, it shows you what humanity as a whole is thinking, loving, fearing, and consuming, without it being filtered to you specifically. And this reconnects you to the culture that you're a part of and creating for. And he values this experience so much that every time he buys a book, he keeps the original receipt inside of it as a physical timestamp to remember when that idea entered his life. So if lesson number 2 is you are what you create, lesson number 3 is what you create comes from what you consume. Books. Books widen the channel, and they are the source of Kojima's deepest philosophy, which is lesson number 4. We are alone, but we are connected. This belief runs through everything Kojima makes. It's how his book begins and how his book ends. It's the entire emotional core of Death Stranding, which is the best-selling game that Kojima actually left Konami to create and founded Kojima Productions for. It's actually how he starts and finishes his book, The Creative Gene. It's also why he creates, to connect with people when he feels isolated, and to give others who are isolated someone to connect to. Kojima believes in the power of memes, but not the internet kind of memes like funny jokes, but more the Richard Dawkins definition of memes, that memes are units of meaning passed from one person to another person across time and across cultures. So stories, ideas, customs, themes, these are all memes. And every creative act is an act of connection. In his book, Kojima wrote, "The world is connected with me plus me. Memes are propagated when people connect with each other. Stories dwell inside everyone and everything, no matter who or what they are. And the act of reading stories, telling them, and sharing them with others is a way that me plus me connect across time and space. Stories dwell inside everyone and everything, and the meaning of those stories will change based on the time and circumstances in which they are read." Kojima's philosophy of memes isn't based solely on appreciating how things were, but ensuring that and enjoying memes, new ones can be created. Interestingly, he does credit marketing and studying what has worked well for him in the past and reusing that as playing a big hand in his success, but he also says that that's playing it safe and boring. And that comes with some level of risk because Kojima spends so much of his time consuming, and that comes with some level of risk, which is why Kojima spends so much of his time consuming art, books, movies, and media, so he keeps his sensibility for what a hit is razor sharp. That way he knows what ideas to reuse and what ideas no longer make sense in the culture as it stands now. He calls his sense knowing how to find the one winner in 10. And if you want to create memes that shape the future, that's exactly what you must do. You must find the connection, the new connection worth pursuing, the spark worth fanning. Because in his view, and I agree, we are not complete in our own creativity. Creativity requires collision between your genes and someone else's memes. So to bring it all together, Kojima didn't follow a straight path. He started in the wrong places. He didn't start with confidence. He didn't even have the right skills. He had no technical skills. And even when he ended up exactly where he wanted to be, everyone who was already there rejected him. And yet he changed everything for gaming and created memes that will last centuries after him because he embodied these four truths. Know who you are, add as much value as you can to what is right in front of you, keep widening your mind through the worlds of others, and remember that creativity is connection. It's me plus me. So if you're a creative person feeling uncertain or alone, it only took one person to tell Kojima that he was creative, and that was enough to change the trajectory of his life. So maybe today, this video can be your version of that conversation, a reminder to connect what you have to give with what others have created before to create something new that is uniquely yours.